Welcome to our webinar about the topic home office. It's one of our webinars in the series Global Mobility and COVID-19. I hope you all had a nice and happy Easter break and were able to enjoy the sun. And unfortunately, most likely you all are back in your home offices. So we will see now about the topics based on our current challenging situation. What the impact is. Before we start, on the right-hand side, you find two boxes. One box is where you can ask us any question you may have. Please do so while we have the webinar, and I will then answer them afterwards as best as I can. And the other thing is then as well on the right-hand side, you find a box where you can download the slides from our current presentation. Before we start, I just want to give you an update about the current situation in Switzerland based on the new news from the federal government, and where we definitely are very keen and looking forward to see what the federal government will tell us on Thursday. Apparently, they are thinking about lifting the ban, at least slightly, and that the lockdown will not be as strict as it is today. But we will see in which sectors there is an impact and what we afterwards might be able to do. Apparently, the number of infected people based on COVID-19 in Switzerland, at least, are reduced. Now, in a couple of other of our neighboring countries, the situation looks a bit different. Like France just indicated more actions for really trying to solve the COVID-19 situation, as well as Spain has listed that they do want to or have to do a bit more as the situation is not looking very good. From a Swiss point of view, currently the borders are still closed. Still, from a Swiss point of view, all other countries are viewed as high-risk countries except Liechtenstein. This has also not changed. Based on that, it's the authority or the federal government has decided that anybody entering Switzerland from one of the high-risk countries should be prohibited, except they are Swiss nationals or people coming to Switzerland and working in the healthcare sector or in the healthcare hospitals, or are really required for on a highly necessary purpose from the government. Further, people who have a Swiss residence permit or a cross-border commuter permit or a notification confirmation, they are also let into the country. As well as people who have already a visa in their passport are allowed to enter Switzerland. However, they are only allowed to enter Switzerland if they are working in Switzerland. There had been a bit of a situation last week where the federal government issued a new ordinance about the cross-border commuters. Apparently, some of the cross-border commuters came to Switzerland or entered Switzerland just for shopping purposes, not for working purposes, and have been then sent back home. Based on our experience from the last week, since last week to today, we had a few incidents where people were not let into the country based on their commute. One was with a cross-border commuter permit, and one was with a visa. We were in the end able to solve the matter, but still there is a possibility that people might not be let in, even they do have one of the listed documents on that page. New applications will currently still not be reviewed by the authority. With new applications, I mean applications for people not working in one of the healthcare sectors or the important sectors we currently need, but in any other sector, who are currently not already in Switzerland. For them, no application will be reviewed. There are different information you may receive from the authorities. Some will tell you, oh, we think we will start soon already with reviewing the documents. Some will tell you until the 15th of June we won't do anything. I can't tell you what really will happen. The rule from the government is, or the provision from the government is that until the 15th of June, no approvals and no applications shall be reviewed for any person not being in Switzerland. And that means also for EU and EFTA nationals as well as for non-EU EFTA nationals. So no application shall be reviewed. Now, seeing at the discussion they currently have about lifting a little bit of the lockdown, we might see as well that there, at least for EU EFTA nationals, we might be able to get again notifications for EU EFTA nationals so that they can cross the border. If not, we most likely will have then to wait until the 15th of June. I hope at one of the next sessions from this series I can tell you a bit more about it. Now, coming to our topic about home office. Now, there are lots of challenges with the home office. What we are now looking only is really on the legal aspects, and then we look on all the aspects regarding home office and working in a different country as the employer is situated, so outside of Switzerland, basically. What you have to do for those people who are currently employed with you in Switzerland, but not working in Switzerland, but outside of Switzerland, you will have to look at the work and residence permit situation. You have to check the nationality and then see whether there is anything to be done regarding a work permit or the notification of posted worker we have in the EU member states, whether anything of this has to be done. There, as even before, you may have realized that notification of posted worker was very different ruled by all the member states of the EU. And now in the current situation, it's even more different. So you really have to look at it for each country separately. You also have to look at the labor law side. Now, in principle, the labor law is applicable from the country in which somebody is performing his work. So if we have somebody employed in Switzerland but is now working, for example, from Germany, then basically the labor law from Germany would be applicable, except the performing of work in Germany is only for a temporary basis. And then the general rules from the labor law will still be the Swiss ones, which will be applicable, except there as well the mandatory ones, like for work hours, holidays, and salary levels, and so on. So there you might have to look really to see whether there is anything which contradicts to the Swiss labor law. Most likely, the only thing you really have to look is at the work hours, and the rest might not really be a big issue. Since that working in the home office now is only on a temporary basis, and hopefully we will be, at least by mid of June, be able to return back to back to the workplace again. It's only then for 3 months or 2.5 months for some of you, and therefore should be no problem. In case it is for a longer period, then maybe it's really useful to check with a lawyer from the country to see what are the consequences, what are the risks, what kind of things you really have to take care of. From our point of view, the labor law part is really the one which is, at least from people employed in Switzerland, might be not really the major issue. Social Security, there is at least between Switzerland and all the EU member states, we do have that 25% ruling, meaning that if somebody is employed in Switzerland and has only one employer, is usually performing his work in Switzerland, therefore he is subject to Swiss Social Security. In case he is now working from home, and if we say it's one of the EU EFTA member states, the Social Security is still looked at that the Swiss one is applicable unless the individual is working for more than 25% from home. Now, the current situation is that people have to work in their home office or from home, and it's not something they do on their free will. I think some of you really would rather like to go back to the office instead of staying the whole time at home and working from home. There is a discussion between the various countries now that all of them intend to not be very strict on that 25% ruling, and might view the time somebody has now stayed in the home office and worked from the home country, that this time will not be looked as really working from home, but rather being looked for still working from Switzerland. And therefore, it will not be, the 25% will not be touched by that. Now, we will have to see then, most likely in May, June, when the first Social Security Administration will really issue also an audience or something to tell us how they would like to check on it or how they would like to solve it. For the moment, I would say really continue to pay the Swiss Social Security for your employees. Check on the health insurance coverage, whether they are sufficiently covered. And as well, I would check on or would take out an A1 for those who are not working now in Switzerland, so that they at least are really also their home countries, they have a document where they can provide them the administration there, that they show they are covered in Switzerland. But there at the moment, we have to wait a bit until the different authorities have issued a documentation where we can see then how they really would like to take that. Taxation. Now, if people are working from the home office, there might be a tax liability in the country they are now performing their work instead of Switzerland. And it might be that there's no taxation in Switzerland on those days. The situation from a tax point of view is really look at that case by case, because it depends really on the personal situation. And the personal situation means where really they have their center of vital interest in the end, as well as where the family is also living, where from a tax point of view, that is the tax residence. And you would have to determine that case by case in order to see whether there is a taxation in that residence country or a tax residence country, basically. And then also you have to look at whether there is a requirement to withhold tax on the salary in the country, or whether maybe if there is a taxation in that country, whether the employee can just file a tax return and based on filing the tax return, pay the necessary taxes. And the last two things is that, and this is also really depending on how long the situation with the home office will be, whether there are any payroll requirements in that country the employee is performing the work, as well as whether you may have even an issue with the permanent establishment. This is now really, I would say, as a very low-key risk or low-key issue, but still, depending on the person and depending on the level where the employee is in the hierarchy of your company, that might be something you would like to look at. And that also depends very much on the country the individual is performing the work. Now, that is quite theoretically. We would like now to go through with you through three cases to look at it in a bit more detail. The first case is a German national is residing in Constance, Germany, and is working for the ABC Consulting Ltd in Zurich in Switzerland. Due to the current situation, he is also working from home since 15th of March, and he most likely will work until the 2nd of May. Before, his usual work schedule was working Fridays from home. Now, what do we need to do in the current situation? We definitely have to look and review the case. Now, from an immigration point of view or work and residence permit point of view, there is nothing to be done. He is German national, and therefore he is definitely allowed to work in Germany. The requirement for posted worker, you may know that in Germany there are three different ways where you have that notification for posted worker to be doing. ABC Consulting is a consulting company, and therefore, from the sector the company is in, looking at the salary level, he is not in an area where he is not meeting the minimum salary in Germany, and therefore there is no notification based on that postal worker provision to be done. So from an immigration point of view, we don't have to do anything. Social Security. We said that he before worked already Fridays from home, so that means if his work quota is 100%, he worked 20% from home, which would be fine based on the agreement that still he will be subject to Swiss Social Security. Now, if he's working now from the 15th of March till the 2nd of May, 100% out of Germany, then in principle that would skip now that he would be subject to German Social Security contributions. Now, as that is definitely not the idea from any of the involved Social Security administrations, neither from the German one nor from the Swiss one, currently at least both have the intention that they will say between 15th of March and 2nd of May, they will look at that period as it would be, as he would have worked like before on his usual work schedule. If the authority will definitely do that, that means he is subject to Swiss Social Security contributions. There is no problem or no risk that he gets switched to the German Social Security. What you should do, or what we would recommend to do, is to request an A1 for him. So in case there is anything that he can show that he is subject to Swiss Social Security. The Swiss Social Security contributions should also be withheld on the employment. Taxation. Now, even before that period, 15th of March till the 2nd of May, that Friday he worked from home, Germany had the right to tax it. And in this scenario, Germany is definitely the tax residence, and therefore for all the days now, from the 15th of March till the 2nd of May, he is working from home. Germany has the right to tax it. Now, what we would recommend to do is really check with the tax authority in Germany whether the individual can pay his taxes through the tax return filing, or you would need to run really a kind of shadow payrolling, at least for the taxes in Germany. As in this scenario, it's only for 1.5 months. Most likely, also the German tax authority will not need you to file and withhold the taxes directly from the employment income. At least that's the information we received from 2 different German tax authorities. We were discussing some cases, but still you will have to actually go back and check with them. The second case is a home office for an international commuter. Here, a British national is residing in Bar, Switzerland, and is working also for the ABC Consulting Ltd in Zurich. His spouse and the 2 children live in Paris, in France. He's commuting to them before on a weekly basis. And now, based on the COVID-19 situation, he moved back to his family basically, and is working since the 15th of March in France. Now, he has a residence in Switzerland, but his main tax residence, and we come to that in a second as well, is France, because France is where his spouse lives and the two children are living, as well as he is commuting back there on a weekly basis, and therefore that is also the center of vital interests. From an immigration point of view, he is an EU national and therefore is allowed to basically also work in France. There is no problem at all, and British nationals are still viewed, at least until the end of the year, as EU nationals. However, what you have to do is to see whether there is anything required regarding the notification for posted worker. France is quite strict on it, and you have to check whether something has to be done, because he is now performing in France for a Swiss company work, and he's not a cross-border commuter, as well as he is not a French citizen. Please review it and check whether you have to do something, because otherwise it is that the fines can be quite severely. From a social security point of view, we also would recommend to just request an A1. And for him now, there should be no problem at all to continue the Swiss Social Security, looking at the period 15th of March till 2nd of May, even if he would basically work in that period. And we would look at that as a kind of an assignment from his Swiss workplace to Paris, to France, and therefore there would be no problem at all to exempt him from the French Social Security, and that he continues to the Swiss Social Security system. That is a bit different as the situation with the cross-border permit, because here we say his residence is basically only Switzerland bar. It's only from a tax point of view that his tax residence is France, because the family is there. And that leads us to the next point in regard to the taxation. There might be a taxation in France, because the tax authority will look at it that in France he has his center of life and vital interests, and therefore France can request the taxes on the days he works in France. What you definitely have to do is check with the French tax authorities whether he can pay the taxes through tax return filing, or you would have to do something from an employer point of view, that you have to withhold taxes and pay them directly to the French tax administration. And then we look at our third case. It's an Hungarian national who is employed by a Swiss company and is on an assignment in France. He has a property in Austria. And due to the current situation, he moved on his own without checking with the HR with his family to Austria, and is working from there since 1st of March until the 2nd of May. What do we have to do there? From a work and residence permit point of view, he is not an Austrian national, he is Hungarian, and therefore you would have to check whether the notification for a posted worker has to be done. Most likely, yes. Um, and the thing is, it should have been done before he even started to work. So that is also valid now for the cases we looked at before. Just check it as quickly as possible, and then also check with the authority or with your lawyer you have in the country what happens if you now do the notification and do it retroactively, which most likely will not be possible. And usually, if you do it too late, there is as well a kind of fine for it. I assume that some of the authorities are aware that the situation is quite difficult for employers, and maybe even will be okay with having the notification done retroactively, but that you still consider all the legal requirements which goes with it. But that is really something you have to check in each country or for each situation separately. As he is working now in Austria and not in the country he was on assignment, because he was on assignment in France, so he most likely has an A1 issued from the Swiss authority, which covers France, which is the place where his assignment was. You would have to request one for Austria now as well, so that the period he's performing work from Austria out, he is covered, and then continue to deduct the Swiss Social Security. There again, there should be no problem at all, and as well that 25% regulation is not. You don't have to really look at it in that situation, because here we look at it as an assignment basically to France as well as now to Austria. What you also have to do is you have to check with the Austrian with an Austrian tax lawyer and with the tax authority in the end whether there is any income taxation in Austria for him performing work in Austria. The Austrian tax authority is quite strict, and there I definitely would recommend to check with that, so that you will not have any fines in the end for not withholding taxes and paying it directly to the Austrian tax administration. The situation is as well that we don't know whether we can return to work then in May, for example, already. Now, the longer that the situation is and the longer people have to work from home or from another country, the higher the risk is that above all from the tax point of view, the taxes have to be paid in that country, and there's also the withholding tax requirement from the employer. Therefore, we definitely recommend you to check those scenarios so that you at least know exactly where the risks are and what you need to do. This was in a short summary about the Home Office and the legal requirements. We have now received a couple of questions which I would like to answer. One is for a non-EU national on an assignment in Zurich and a new application for a B permit under a local contract. Can the request be submitted? The employee is in Switzerland and whereas the new local employment is a new application, the person is already in Switzerland, so and whether it will be reviewed by the authority. The answer is I don't know. We have currently a couple of discussions with different authorities on that topic. Our point of view is that if somebody is already in Switzerland, then it basically should be viewed, and you file a new application for a new work permit, it should be basically viewed as an extension. And currently the authority are still reviewing any extension you do. There's no problem at all. They review it, and if you meet all the requirements, they will also approve it. And our point of view is that this is the same situation, even if you change now from assignment to local employment. However, we have received at the moment different input and different information from the authorities. So you definitely have to look at it with the cantonal labor market authority. Worst case is that the labor market authority will tell you only after the 15th of June they even will accept new applications. My recommendation would definitely be to try to extend the assignment, so at least you can keep the employee in Switzerland and he can continue to work. And check as well with the labor market authority in the canton he has to work, whether they will accept the application now or whether they will say they only will accept it after the 15th of June. Zurich, for example, will most likely tell you that they only will review it after the 15th of June. But you definitely you have to look at it and also make a good justification why you would like to change the current situation from assignment to local employment. The other question we have received is whether a cross-border can commute on a daily basis without a quarantine requirement from Austria and Italy. Yes, they can, at least if you ask about the quarantine from the government, then yes, there is no governmental quarantine requirement for people with a cross-border commuter permit coming from Austria or Italy. As long as they're really commuting for a day, for working here. Some of the officials at the customs do want to see a kind of confirmation from the employer that they cannot work from home. And would we have recommended our clients that they issue such a statement to the commuters who definitely cannot work from home but have to work out of Switzerland, and up to now there were a few cases where the entry was denied, but usually there is no problem. A quarantine requirement as such is not implied on that. These were the only two questions we had, so I hope I answered them to you. If not, then just get back to us again by email. I quickly would like to use the next 2-3 minutes to give you an idea what you can see from us in the next few weeks. There is one thing. Next Tuesday we do have again a new session of our Global Mobility and COVID-19 series, and you will get an invitation soon. Then we do have our regular webinars. There are about two now. The upcoming two are for compliance matters, as well as for management staff in international with international working quotas. And then we do have also one more English one, which is on the 28th of May. It's about business travelers. Then I just can say use our hotline and call us if you have any questions, so that we can answer them, and visit our YouTube channel as well. And I hope you all stay safe, and we will meet at least next Tuesday again. Have a great week. Thank you.